Ooh, this is sad. Here you have someone pretending to be a tough guy turn out to be just a second banana for Joy Behar, the poster child for Trump derangement. Sadly, Bob is now just another gibbering, enfeebled ninny, surrounded by inept relatives as he frets about how Trump's in power and he's not. See, Trump's rise coincides with De Niro's decline. And the person who knows it most is De Niro. He's a fine example of how not to turn loss into bitterness. There are plenty of people who don't like Trump, but don't let it warp their minds or their ability to speak aloud among grown-ups or The View. But the Schiffs and De Niros of the world are emotionally damaged by politics to a point where they can't even assess their own emotions.
What happens when Fox News firebrand Greg Gutfeld goes head-to-head with Hollywood legend Robert De Niro? The result was a heated showdown that made Raging Bull feel like a quiet meditation class. De Niro stuck to his classic tough guy style, but Gutfeld answered with sharp jokes, heavy sarcasm, and one brutal line that completely stopped him cold. Want to see how a late-night host took apart one of Hollywood's biggest icons? This clash felt like something straight out of an award-winning movie scene.
Last night, an elderly, confused man went missing in New York. Luckily, a band of self-satisfied elitists found him babbling on the street, threw some pants on him, gave him a stage.
Oh my God.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
Once upon a time, somewhere between fading glory and shelves full of dusty Oscars, Robert De Niro seemed to decide that being a legendary actor just wasn't enough anymore. Suddenly, he stepped into the role of moral referee, political expert, and Hollywood's loudest voice of outrage. Because apparently, when the country faces real problems, the answer is an 80-year-old movie star shouting from a luxury Manhattan penthouse about how everyone else is living their lives wrong.
Robert De Niro graced the knitting circle in hell known as The View, where he tried to link random thoughts into a sentence. Joy was there to wind him up, since he's played some of the most unredeemable characters.
You have played some of the most really unredeemable characters. Travis Bickle. Travis Bickle was a psychopathic taxi driver. Jake LaMotta, who used to beat his wife, and he was in the Raging Bull. Is Trump worse than they are?
To me, he is.
Then came Greg Gutfeld, a guy who looks like he spends his free time scrolling Reddit just to argue with strangers. But somehow, against all odds, he pulled off what almost nobody else would even try. A full-scale, sarcasm-loaded takedown of Hollywood's loudest moral voice. No screaming, no angry meltdown. Just the kind of dry humor sharp enough to cut through steel.
Being an actor is tough. For how does one handle real life without a script? Not equipped to think analytically, you're left powerless when observing your own predictions about life turn out wrong. It's not supposed to be this way, De Niro thinks. Only the cool guys get to win. Sorry, Bob. That's only in the movies. But at least you'll always have joy.
De Niro was once a true Hollywood powerhouse, the kind of actor you watched in mob movies while secretly checking the dark corners of the room afterward. Now he's become the guy who casually appears at political events nobody asked him to join, wearing a look somewhere between deep frustration and the end of the world. He perfected the art of the tough, brooding stare years ago. But these days, that non-stop scowl feels less like a performance and more like part of his everyday personality.
It kills me. Talk about persuasive. Really, I was on the fence about Trump, but then I decided to really listen to one of the great generational leaders of American pop culture. And the clenched fists at the end, that really drove it home. It looked like he was pressing a 2-pound weight in a Jenny Craig commercial.
Oh my God.
Look at it again. It's so cute. It's like he found out the restaurant serves Jell-O, or that he won a $10 scratch-off, or he scored a cameo in Jersey Shore, or he had his first #2 in a week.
Gutfeld never needed a giant stage to make his point. Just a spotlight, sharp humor, and a little common sense. And when the focus landed on De Niro, the Hollywood legend didn't exactly shine. Behind the angry speeches and dramatic interviews was simply another celebrity talking down to everyday people. De Niro stepped into the role of America's most offended grandfather, full of grim expressions and non-stop outrage. But Gutfeld wasn't impressed. He saw a celebrity taking himself far too seriously, and with a few perfectly timed jokes and sarcastic looks, he turned the whole performance into comedy.
Yeah, poor Bob. You know, he's like a star whose girlfriend dumps him for a bigger star who's in the White House while you're in Dirty Grandpa. Oh, man. So now the resistance is reduced to applauding tantrums. Who knew De Niro's lasting role would be irrelevant gas bag, pleasing irrelevant peers? And he's doing this as Trump organizes a summit. Not a war, a summit. And you got to wonder, if it were President Hillary, Bob's choice, would you actually have a summit or would you have a war? But forget deeds. What matters is adulation received from an emotional display before a packed sea of millionaire lemmings. So who cares that Trump meets with North Korea? It's no meet the parents. Right, Travis?
Gutfeld simply said what many people were already thinking, but wouldn't say out loud. How strange that a man who spent his entire career pretending to be other people suddenly act like he should tell everyone else how to live. That's not just irony. That's irony walking into the room wearing a tuxedo and demanding attention. The contrast made the whole thing even funnier. De Niro delivered every speech with the drama of a movie villain, while Gutfeld answered with the calm sarcasm of someone leaving a brutal online review. De Niro puffed himself up with outrage, but Gutfeld quietly pointed out the obvious. How does a Hollywood star who hasn't been near everyday life in decades suddenly claim to speak for working people? And that's where the image started to crack. Not because De Niro got older or stopped making great movies, but because he confused fame with wisdom and applause with authority. In Hollywood, that's a dangerous mistake.
De Niro clearly has thought about this, more so than his career. His choice of roles is now down to cinnamon and lobster. He was then asked about the Trump kids. At least he doesn't want my kids to take this the wrong way.
I don't want my kids to take this the wrong way, but if my kids did what these kids did, I wouldn't want to be related to them. I would disown them.
With his usual deadpan style, Gutfeld held up a mirror, and De Niro clearly didn't like what he saw. Instead of a legendary movie character, the image looking back felt more like an out-of-touch millionaire lecturing ordinary people from behind luxury and privilege. The funny part was that Gutfeld barely had to do anything. De Niro handed him the material himself through dramatic speeches and non-stop outrage. What started as a serious political performance slowly turned into comedy, with Gutfeld calmly pointing out the contradictions, using sarcasm and sharp logic. That's what made it hit so hard. Gutfeld didn't need to shout. He simply exposed how celebrity activism can sometimes sound disconnected from the real struggles of everyday people.
What a sad end for a great actor. He went from Raging Bull to this. You know, De Niro kind of represents Hollywood in the sense that they realize that they're losing influence with the public, and that's what's generating the emotional response. They've never felt less important.
The audience wasn't shocked. They were entertained. Gutfeld simply said what many people were already tired of ignoring, that Hollywood's loudest voices often act far more important than they really are. There was De Niro, a millionaire celebrity, talking about working-class struggles, while Gutfeld connected more naturally with everyday people trying to get through rising bills and daily stress. De Niro delivered dramatic speeches and angry stares, but Gutfeld calmly pointed out how disconnected it all sounded. What made it work was Gutfeld's style. He treated the whole thing like a sharp comedy roast, playful but accurate. De Niro aimed for seriousness and authority, but instead ended up looking like another Hollywood star, taking himself far too seriously.
Before I get to you, let's go to, I think he was in Canada, Toronto, opening a restaurant or doing something, and this is what he had to say.
And I just want to make a note of apology for the idiotic behavior of my president. It's a disgrace. And I apologize to Justin Trudeau, and the other people at the G7. It's disgusting.
You know, I actually feel bad for him because I think he's one of those people that has never emotionally recovered from 2016. This is a guy who's got serious Trump disorder.
There was something oddly poetic about watching a man famous for playing tough gangsters get verbally picked apart by a late-night host known more for sarcasm than intimidation. Gutfeld didn't brag or raise his voice. He simply laughed, because sometimes reality is so absurd that joking about it feels like common sense. De Niro's dramatic speeches may still earn applause at elite Hollywood gatherings, but Gutfeld's comments connected with regular people more worried about grocery prices than celebrity opinions. That was the difference. Gutfeld stayed grounded while De Niro came across as distant and out of touch. What followed felt less like a debate and more like a slow unraveling of Hollywood arrogance. The larger-than-life image De Niro once carried no longer felt powerful. It felt old, fading quietly into the background, like a forgotten clock still ticking in an empty room.
Jesse, I find that he's smartest when they drop his audio. But, you know, it's kind of sad because you can see, like, people who are stuck in some kind of, I don't know, derangement, they can't see it themselves. And they're not surrounded by people telling them that they have a problem. And they lack self-awareness because everybody either tells them they're wonderful or wants to sell them cocaine. So he has no clue what he's doing, and he's upset over the emotional nature. His anger is emotional about Trump. It's nothing practical.
You're right.
And then the power shifted. De Niro was still acting, but this time the stage wasn't Hollywood. It was real life, and the audience wasn't applauding. They were laughing at the strange sight of a movie legend trying to position himself as a political philosopher long after his biggest roles had passed. What followed felt inevitable. De Niro drifted deeper into celebrity outrage, while Gutfeld stayed calm, letting sarcasm and simple truth do the work. No yelling, no dramatic attacks, just quiet satire exposing an image that was already beginning to crack. That was the real hit. Not anger, but the slow realization that the old mystique was fading. Gutfeld didn't destroy it, he simply pointed at it, while the audience watched the illusion fall apart on its own. By the end, people weren't cheering or booing. They were just staring, wondering if they were watching a performance or an actor slowly becoming trapped inside one final character.
He used to sell his movies on Leno and Letterman, and it was like watching a WNBA game. You just were just bored to death. All of a sudden, Trump became president, and he started saying things, I want to punch the president in the face. You know, he's a crooked piece of... And then all of a sudden, De Niro became interesting during his media tours, and that's the only way now he can get publicity for his film, is by cursing and saying...
Here's the twist. De Niro's decline wasn't about age. It was about losing touch with the audience while still acting like the world was hanging on every word. He tried to position himself as America's moral voice, but to many people, he just sounded like another angry celebrity giving lectures nobody asked for. Gutfeld saw the opening immediately. He didn't attack with rage or insults. He simply held up a mirror and let the contradictions speak for themselves. That was what made it hit so hard, the gap between the legendary actor people once admired and the out-of-touch figure they now saw on screen. While De Niro delivered dramatic speeches, Gutfeld answered with calm sarcasm, sharp timing, and humor that connected with everyday people. In the end, the embarrassment wasn't that De Niro got mocked. It was that the jokes felt more believable than the message itself. By the time it was over, the audience wasn't angry or shocked. They were laughing at how easily the image had fallen apart. And Gutfeld walked away without ever needing to raise his voice, proving once again that wit can hit harder than outrage.